The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That wasn't bad. FDR. So, and that line is so famous now that it almost sounds inevitable. Like, of course, a president would say something that memorable in a national crisis. But in March of 1933, there was nothing inevitable about confidence. Banks were failing. People were out of work. Families were losing farms and homes. Veterans were marching on Washington. Makeshift shanty towns were rising on the edges of cities. And a lot of Americans were asking a brutal question. Had the system itself failed?
What makes this era so powerful is that it's not just a story about an economic collapse. It's a story about what people expected government to do when capitalism stopped delivering security.
Yes, and that's the tension that we're going to be following today. And we're going to start in the shiny confidence of the 20s. And that's really the key word, confidence or the lack of confidence. And then we're going to move through the devastating economic crash and the human wreckage of the Great Depression. And then we're going to try to watch the country argue its way back into a new relationship with the federal government.
So this is not just a story about numbers dropping on Wall Street. It's about fear, blame, survival, and a giant national experiment in whether democracy could respond to catastrophe faster than despair could.
Yes, the music worked this week.
Yes.
I was kind of playing with it as we were talking, like, oh, man, I hope this works.
It did.
It sure did.
Way to go.
How were everybody's weeks?
It's good.
I've had better. Had better.
Well, Dr. Garrison, would you like to enlighten the listeners on why you've had a bit of a bad week?
Long story short, when you think that you're just having fun playing in a charity 3-on-3 basketball tournament with the kids, just trying to get out there, get everybody excited.
It's for the kids.
For the kids.
It's for the kids.
And you think that a D1 cornerback is just going to have fun and kind of toss it around, have a good time. Things can go wrong quickly. And
So
all
what
of a sudden,
happened?
You think you're just standing there making a fundamentally sound defensive play. Next thing you know, you're flat on your back with your glasses flying across the floor and a foot stepping on your face. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get up again.
Were you standing next to me, Hill, when this happened?
No.
Because I had
got down
an
there
incredible view of this.
I got down there just after that had happened.
Yes,
No.
I had
Mr.
an
Hill, I'm
incredible
glad
view of
you didn't
this.
I know Miss Kellner was very worried.
I actually was worried because it looked bad. And, yeah, Garrison goes up, and the D1 cornerback comes in. Garrison goes down. He's on the ground. Then Mr. Forbes
Came in hard.
accidentally
Sure.
then ran into Garrison, stepped on his face, at which point the glasses fell off. And I saw you laying down there, and I saw your face, and I thought, oh, man,
Yeah.
this is going to really shake him up.
Yeah. I think a lot of people thought he's not getting up. This guy's not getting back up unless it's on a stretcher. But then
Pull yourself up by those bootstraps,
I stood
Herbert
up.
Hoover.
I took the glasses and broken glasses, set them down, and I said, "Let's ball. Let's ball, fellas."
Actually, that did
Wow.
not happen. Actually,
That's the way I remember.
you
it.
got up and you did lay your glasses down and you were huffing and puffing like, well, that's just the way that these guys are going to play. I mean, this isn't, what are we doing here? I thought this was just supposed to be for fun, but I mean, this is ridiculous.
I don't remember that.
And this is the only thing that 1,400 kids in our school are talking about.
Yeah.
I have walked
Well-
into so many classes and they've
Yeah.
been saying to me, is Dr. Garrison okay? And I said, actually, this is one of the greatest things to ever happen to Dr. Garrison because I have believed for quite some time that he could use an upgrade on his glasses.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one take.
A lot of people today said they love your old glasses, that this thicker frame
I don't know.
is really working for you.
They're too tight. They're rubbing against my ears. I don't love it. Maybe
I'm just saying that
I'm open to the bigger frames to go back.
Kaup's W8 psych class
Yeah.
was very supportive of a thicker frame on you.
Well, maybe that's what you've heard. I've heard a lot of words like hero, role model, inspiration.
Yeah.
Those are the words I've heard.
And you know what? Those aren't just names. Those aren't just words. That's an identity.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
You earn your place in this world.
All righty. Let's.
By the way, I think my mic is the one where if I move too far,
Yeah, you need to
I
stay.
gotta stay right
you gotta stay
here.
up there.
and
Stay focused.
Right
Stay
central.
focused.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay, so moving on from one Great Depression to the next.
Right.
To understand
segue.
why the
Good
Depression hit so hard, you have to begin with why the 1920s look so good. We talked about this last week. On the surface, right, it looks like this decade of expansion. We got cars and radios and appliances and advertising and credit and rising stock prices, but there was this sense that modern America had figured out how to mass produce prosperity and things look good, right?
And that's why Hoover is such ostensibly a great president, because he's just going to continue this thing. He's had a huge reputation as being this brilliant engineer and administrator, especially after World War I. He basically kept Europe from starving. He really did believe that efficiency, expertise, he's sort of like a progressive figure in many ways, that society could get better and that with voluntary cooperation, American capitalism was going to continue to surge. So when he enters office in 1929, he looks like someone not preparing for disaster. He looks like someone who's inheriting the best economy we've ever had, and he's just going to keep the thing humming.
Right. And that's the first big thing I think listeners should remember, that this is not something that is a material, tangible thing that you can manipulate, because he's had great experience with that. This is about confidence. This is about an intangible. And so a lot of Americans assume the boom was
Assume the
permanent.
boom.
Assume the boom.
I
Hey,
like that.
assume the boom.
Assume the boom. Oh, where's our
Which one would you like?
I don't know, that snappy, that little tech, like we're in the discotheque kind of a thing going.
Oh, you mean
yeah.
this one?
Assume that. Yeah. Get ready. Here we go. Assume the boom.
Assume the boom. Assume the boom.
Get out the room.
Assume the boom. Get out the room.
That was
I didn't see that.
that was
coming.
organic. That was
None of us saw it
serendipitous.
coming.
When I heard you say "assume the boom," I did not think that would lead to that. But look, here we are.
And that's why
Oh.
this podcast reaches 34 countries.
I'm so, that made me so happy. I am so happy. So
Where were we?
Yeah. Oh,
that could
well,
be a
you
great
know.
phrase for our students to remember.
Assume the boom?
What do you think
Oh.
when you think 1920s? Assume the boom.
Assume the
Assume
boom.
the boom.
That's all you can
Okay,
do.
if any of our students, that maybe that'll be
Ooh.
a big bonus word. It's
Oh, yeah.
phrase.
Do we have a quiz next week?
You know, what we should. Well,
do we?
I don't know.
At some point, you will be asked if you're ready to assume the boom.
Yes.
And if you know what we mean by that.
Or no, rather, we need to set it up, and they have to come up with assume the boom. They're like, what was the
Okay, yeah.
catchphrase that was the earmark in the 1920s
Yeah.
that we really emphasized during
Or
the
how about
podcast?
this? How about this? No quiz, nothing like that. If they come to us and they say assume the boom,
What do we do? Give them a ticket?
that's a
Yeah.
point on something? No? Okay,
don't
forget
know.
that,
I don't
listeners.
Yeah, that's too easy because
See, I
then,
gotta
then they're
keep
just going to
track of
tell
that.
their friends, like,
Yeah,
all you have
right.
to do is assume the boom.
All right, it'll come when you least
Yeah,
expect
when
it.
you
It will.
least
Oh, yeah.
expect
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
you-
Assume the boom.
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
Yeah, assume. Okay.
Workshop that.
Yeah, so not to use that word over and over, but businesses did assume that consumers would keep buying. Investors assumed the stock market would keep climbing, and politicians assumed growth itself would smooth over much deeper weaknesses.
You know what happens when you assume?
You make a ass out of you and me.
Yeah. It's okay. It's in the Bible. So you can say it.
And my kids, when we
It's
would
an
go,
animal.
we would go to the zoo,
Yeah.
and my kids always thought it was hilarious because I was like, "What is that? What is that animal over there?" It's like a Somali wild and then they
ass.
would look
Yeah.
at me and they go, "Ass." I'd be like, "That's right, that's correct," and they'd go, "Oh yeah."
My son just went on a field trip to the zoo. And shout out Graham. He listens to every episode.
What's Graham's middle name?
Same as mine.
Assume
What's yours?
the boom.
Stuart.
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 So he went to the zoo and he started making, all the kids loved it. So when he got back to class, he started making a paper version of the zoo because they all got maps.
Mm-hmm.
And so a whole bunch of his classmates thought that was great. So they all started making parts of the zoo. He signed them parts.
Oh,
And
wow.
the teacher sent a little message home and she's like, "This is great. They're making a recreation.
He's like Herbert Hoover as
He
the
is.
Food Administration.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Voluntary.
Although that story doesn't end. Yeah. So, yes.
Guys, we're 10 minutes in.
Okay,
I can't believe I'm the one who's saying this, but
Sorry. Okay. So let's go fast here. The crash comes. It's October 1929, and oh my God. Well, here's where it helps to slow down. The antithesis of what I just said I was going to do. So the stock market, this crash is dramatic, but we need to remember it did not single-handedly create the Great Depression. What it did was expose just how shaky the whole structure already was.
Exactly, precisely. And so think about the 1920s economy as a house that looked really good from the street but had serious problems in the foundation. And one problem was overproduction, that factories and farms were becoming so efficient, they were producing huge amounts of goods, but ordinary people didn't either have the income to keep buying it all, or like it's simple supply and demand, right? That if the supply is up so much, the price is going to go down. Another problem was an uneven distribution of wealth, that a lot of money was concentrated at the very top of society, which made the economy less stable because mass consumption depended on everybody else still having spending power.
And don't forget about speculation. People were buying stocks because prices were rising, and many were buying on margin. That's like buying on credit, which means money that you don't have. So if prices started falling, people would be forced to sell fast just to cover what they owed. That turns a drop into a spiral.
And when you add weak banking into the mix and think about the fact that there was no such thing as federal deposit insurance, meaning, banks could kind of do what they wanted and there was no guarantee your money would be safe. So thousands of small banks become vulnerable. And when people start to panic and rush to pull their money, the banks start to just flat out close up shop and the money just sort of disappears. These banks collapsing, savings vanishing, that meant that there's no credit. And without credit, business couldn't borrow. And instead, they had to start laying people off.
And there's also an international dimension to this. This is a global Great Depression, and after World War I, the global economy was tangled up in debts and reparations and trade. So when the United States stumbled, the shock traveled outward. And so when the world economy weakened, that came right back into the United States. So it's kind of just like this cycle that runs through the entire globe. And the Smoot-Hawley tariff, one of the best. Raised or lowered duties on imports, and
you said duty. Okay.
All right. So that, of course, is a line from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So the Smoot-Hawley tariff is going to raise taxes on imports, and many countries are going to retaliate over that. This does not alone cause the depression by itself, but it absolutely makes an already bad international situation worse.
All right, so let's break it down. So if you want a clean, general audience version of the causes, here it is. The crash mattered, but the crash was really the moment when a fragile economy stopped pretending it was healthy.
So the boom had hidden too much.
Assume the boom.
Assume it.
And this boom that we keep referring to, it covered over a lot of major problems, particularly in farming and agriculture. But banks were weak. Consumer debt continued to grow. There's global instability. And the fantasy that speculation was the same thing as wealth really created a fantasy. And ultimately, that fantasy kind of fizzled.
Some fantasies are good, but not this one. So,
Yeah.
So let's talk about how bad it really was, because I think sometimes students hear, 25% unemployment, and it's kind of just a number for them.
Yeah, but by 1933, unemployment had climbed to about 1 in 4 workers. If you take 25% of 100, that is 1 in 4.
Wow.
That's
Well done with the math.
Right. That's a lot of people. So millions of people are out of work at the same time. Banks are going to fail, businesses shut down, families lose their savings that they thought were safe, bread lines and soup kitchens become part of the national landscape. People start riding freight trains, searching for work. So we have a lot of internal migration. That's a buzzword that AP likes. And many who did have jobs took wage cuts, were only allowed to work shorter hours, or had more precarious work that was only available to them.
And it's important to note that the burden was not shared equally. Farmers had already been struggling well before 1929, so now they enter the Depression already in rough shape. And in the Great Plains, drought and overworked soil, which in and of itself is a pretty fascinating story, maybe for a later time, is going to lead to something called the Dust Bowl, one of the worst ecological disasters in American history, where huge storms swept all this dried topsoil into the air, blackening the skies, kind of looking like doomsday. Families had to abandon their land, go west, especially to California, looking for work.
And those migrants often were called Okies, though not all of them were literally from Oklahoma. The term became a label for desperate Dust Bowl migrants more broadly, and people who arrived in California expecting opportunity and instead found overcrowded camps, lower wages, suspicion, and exploitation.
And African Americans were hit especially hard too, and in many places they faced the old brutal rule that they were the last hired and the first fired. Black unemployment rates soared, well above that 1 in 4 rate, very catastrophic. And even when New Deal relief came later, it often came through segregated systems or discriminatory local officials. So for Black Americans, the Depression was economic crisis piled on top of Jim Crow that they had been experiencing since the end of the Civil War.
And this is an important point because the Depression
Did you just say I had an important point?
I did.
Thank you.
But now I regret it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Depression exposed structural inequality because it did not create racism and regional poverty or label vulnerability, but instead it magnified all of these things.
Right. And that's why the human imagery of this era is so haunting. Dust-coated farm families, men selling apples on city corners, children in breadlines, the Hoovervilles on the edges of towns. The Depression was not just an economic event. It changed literally what daily life looked like.
Hoover.
Where's Hoover? I mean,
Hoover.
where's Hoover in all of this? Because he's president of the United States and he's supposed to be doing something. But we have to be kind of fair here. Hoover didn't cause the Great Depression, nor did he just sit around and do nothing. It's too simple. It's not entirely accurate.
Yeah, poor Hoover.
Poor guy.
He believed that the government did have a role. I mean, he was more conservative at this time. He had been a progressive, but certainly more on the conservative side. But he believed that the government had a limited and more indirect role in society. He really preferred the idea of voluntarism. Voluntarism?
Sure.
Whatever. Encouraging businesses, local governments, and private charities to all cooperate together rather than having the federal government hand relief directly to individuals. And he feared that this direct federal aid would undermine self-reliance and permanently expand the state in ways he saw dangerous.
Right. And you can hear that philosophy in one of his best-known lines, which is, economic depression cannot be cured by legislative action or executive pronouncement, unquote. Hoover believed a recovery would come from restoring confidence, encouraging cooperation, and stabilizing institutions, not direct aid, not from Washington becoming the nation's provider of last resort.
Okay, so what did he do? And this gets back to something we mentioned just a minute ago, the Smoot-Hawley tariff in 1930.
The aforementioned
right.
Smoot-Hawley.
And then, of course, everyone knows it from Ferris Bueller, and that's a lot of fun.
Bueller.
Anyone?
The looks on the kids' faces. I'm like, we've seen those looks.
Well, not in our classes.
When
you walk by other classrooms,
They
sometimes
do.
you'll see that.
Thank you, Simone.
That was so good.
All right, so if Hoover thinks that this Smoot-Hawley tariff is going to work, what's he hoping? Well, like any tariff, he's hoping that it would create protection for American producers, but instead we got a bunch of retaliation from abroad, which shrank trade even further and completely backfired, so that by 1932, he tried to create the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, or RFC, which tried to loan money to banks, railroads, and other major institutions with the hope that it would all trickle down somehow to the everyday Joe.
Yes, trickle down.
And we've heard this before.
Yes, and this is where ordinary Americans often looked at Hoover and thought, you are helping the top of the system and asking suffering people to wait for the benefits to trickle down. The people at the bottom are the ones suffering the most. But The RFC was not meaningless, but it did feel very distant to most people. If your family was hungry, right, a loan to a bank did not look like relief for you.
Right. And the gap between policy and what people were really experiencing in their lives was huge. That was everything. Hoover's measures were too cautious, too indirect, and too rooted in a pre-crisis vision of how the economy ought to heal. And in a moment of mass suffering, he still kind of seemed to be treating the emergency as if it were mainly a problem of confidence and coordination.
And then his public image just pretty much collapsed because all these people who don't feel like they're benefiting or not receiving any of this aid, they start moving into these shanty towns of the homeless and they nickname them Hoovervilles. That's
Yikes.
pretty rough. And it wasn't really
bad PR.
not peak, and it wasn't even a joke. It was more of like literally this is where we are because you're not helping us. And Americans were essentially assigning ownership of the disaster to, I think by all accounts, was a pretty decent guy.
Yeah, that Sunday CBS Sunday Morning clip is nice on him, and yeah, he does definitely get the unfortunate. But you know what? The buck stops here, as Harry Truman famously said. So the final blow for Hoover was the bonus army in 1932. World War I veterans marched on Washington, D.C. They asked for an early payment of a promised bonus from their service in World War I. Many were broke, unemployed, desperate, and they needed this bonus now. But Hoover orders the camps of these veterans to be cleared, and he actually calls in the army.
Yikes.
Although I just listened to something interesting that actually it was Douglas MacArthur who cleared them out, and he went way beyond the authority he was given by
Right.
Hoover for this.
Right.
But again, the buck stops here with the president. And so these images of veterans being driven out and, it just created this horrible moment for Hoover, and it wrecked whatever had remained of his political standing.
Optics are
Matter.
optics.
Yeah.
Yeah, optics matter.
Optics matter.
And that was a huge black eye for Hoover, no doubt. So you have a nation in crisis.
Did you
and
say
watching,
that because of Garrison's
what did I say? What?
black eye?
I don't have a black eye.
Oh.
I'm actually
no,
surprised
I
you
was
don't.
Not.
My nose is a little swollen.
Looks
You said
usual size to me.
Your melodic voice was not affected.
Yeah,
by your
thankfully.
swollen
Imagine
nasal.
if I had my larynx stepped on, my vocal
Oh,
cords
boy.
damaged.
Imagine.
There goes the moneymaker.
No kidding. Oh my! So getting back to the Hoover, the optics not good. We're a nation in crisis, and now we're watching soldiers confront veterans who are asking for money they believe they earned, which they did. They just were demanding it a little earlier. So even if Hoover and his allies thought they were restoring order, the public saw a government turning force on suffering citizens. So by 1932, the election is not just a contest of parties. It feels so much bigger. It's like a referendum on whether the old approach has failed.
And into that moment steps Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, former governor of New York, member of a very prominent New York family. He's a politician with really an extraordinary gift for optimism, and he's a great speech giver, an overall wonderful leader whose own struggle with polio had kind of shaped the way he connected strength with reassurance.
And Roosevelt didn't arrive with one perfectly detailed blueprint for how to end the Depression. But what he offered first was something almost as important: motion, energy, confidence, practicality, a willingness to try anything to try to improve this economy.
Yeah, throw wet spaghetti noodles on the wall, see which ones stick. And during the campaign, he gave the phrase that would define the era. And this was not like, I don't think it was a like deliberate or intentional thing on his part. He says, "I pledge you." Now, see, I'm getting
that
more
was
Teddy.
good.
I'm getting more
That was a
Teddy.
little Teddy.
That was
Roosevelt
I mean,
had more of the Boston Brahmin.
They did. So I pledge. Yeah, very patrician, but yeah. Okay, I'm not even going to try it. So I pledge you. I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people. I mean, did he know, like, oh, I know what the New Deal means? I don't think he
I
did.
feel like a lot of historic catchphrases are more like one-offs that no one really anticipated.
Off the cuff
and then
mentionings. Yeah.
just get
A
somebody for the-
New Deal for the American people.
Oh, that was good.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank
You've
you.
been
Did you see the
practicing.
movie? What was the movie with Bill Murray played? FDR?
Yeah, it's
Talked about how he had all these.
Hyde Park on Hudson.
Yeah. How he had a lot of dalliances, shall we say?
Yes. Ooh.
I pledge myself to a New Deal for the American people.
That was loud. That was very, very loud.
Well done.
That's how we talk.
Yeah, he talked just like that, and because of the way he talked, he wins in a landslide. And almost immediately, the tone is going to change. The famous inaugural line that we said at the beginning of the podcast about fear, it wasn't just rhetoric, it was brilliant political strategy. And he wanted to calm the panic and create room for action.
And radio becomes one of his most powerful tools. Just like us, he had the face for radio. And in his fireside chats, as they were called, Roosevelt spoke directly to the people in a very plain style that made his presidency feel personal. And he was able to explain very complicated problems in ordinary language, which really helped people when it came to these complex financial things like the banking crisis, right? It matters enormously that he can come on and people really feel like he's with them. Like, hey, I'm here for you. This is what's going on. This is what I'm going to do to help it. And he could go over, people's heads. He could get past rumors, he could get past panic, he could get past partisan noise and really speak straight into their homes.
Yeah, and I love to use the analogy of he being the doctor with very good bedside manner. It's like so many people are like, these symptoms are happening and nobody can quite tell me what's wrong with me. If you get a doctor that's like, we have diagnosed you with something, and this is what we're going to prescribe going forward as your treatment plan. You're not curing the problem, but you're like informing them, and that in itself is a comfort, I think. Yeah. And so one of the best examples is when he reassures the Americans that it was, quote,
safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than under the mattress.
Ooh, I liked it when you said under.
Mm-hmm.
That was key. The whole thing. That was really good.
Because it's not quite the Boston; it's like the elevated Boston.
Yes, exactly. Elevated Boston.
Yeah.
I'm into that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that line captures the whole New Deal political style. It's explanation. It's reassurance. It's an insistence that government could be both active and understandable.
Okay, so let's introduce this New Deal in a kind of clean framework. It really is easy to remember it as relief, recovery, and reform, the 3 R's.
The 3 R's. Relief means immediate help for suffering people, something that Hoover never seemed to do with that RFC. So think jobs, think food, think emergency assistance. Some people got checks. Think, anything to get families through the crisis immediately.
So then second phase, recovery, means restarting the economy, farms, banks, industry, employment, and production.
And finally, reform was trying to address the overall system, create changes so this type of collapse would be less likely to happen again.
And for relief, one major example would be the CCC, which was Roosevelt's favorite New Deal program, the Civilian Conservation Corps. It put young men to work on environmental and infrastructure projects. They would plant trees, they built trails, they improved parks, and it fed families too because much of their pay went home. I think they were paid $25 a month or something, and they would send most of it home. The WPA, another project, the Works Progress Administration.
Great Grandpa Garrison was in the WPA.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm. They said that they would call it the "We Piddle Around" because they just were trying to find work.
It later became another enormous relief/jobs program employing people on public works and also in arts and writing projects.
Yeah, and so for recovery, think of efforts to stabilize agricultural and industry and big regional developments, projects like the TVA, which built dams, controlled flooding, improved navigation, expanded access to electricity in the Tennessee Valley.
And for reform, we get things like bank regulation and securities regulation that we very much have today. I think the SEC and the federal government is going to move toward rules designed to restore trust in finance. People won't feel like they need to hide their money under mattresses anymore. And that includes a new landscape that eventually gives people more confidence that banks and markets will not remain total free fire zones. That's just nothing but unpredictability.
Also a big one for reform, the Social Security Administration.
Exactly. Yes.
Which
Kinda
starts the.
big.
Well, I think we're going to get to that.
Oh, we are.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Josh,
Like I looked at
that's
the
a big one.
script. So what I love about this moment is that it's very messy, right? That Roosevelt is not ideologically pure in some rigid sense. He's experimental. I mentioned this earlier. He's practical. He tries, programs, adjusts, expands, retreats, and he keeps selling the broader idea that the government has a duty to intervene when the social and economic order is breaking down.
And that is the deeper shift. Before the Depression, many Americans expected the federal government to be smaller, more distant, more limited in everyday economic life. After the first New Deal, it becomes much easier to imagine Washington as a direct actor in jobs, welfare.
Change!
Oh, yeah.
Okay, this is nuanced, though, because we have a change in the fact that from this time forward, this is going to be the expectation of the federal government.
Yeah.
However, we have a continuity because the progressives
Yes.
really opened this door. And even before the progressives, the populists begin this idea of a more active, energetic federal government to equal the playing field.
So we see change and continuity.
Yes. So nuanced.
It's very nuanced. There's lots of nuance.
So complex.
We have to be honest, though. The New Deal wasn't just this giant miracle switch that suddenly relieved all the suffering, that suddenly stabilized all of our institutions. It didn't do that. It did not fully end the Depression on its own.
Right. And naturally, there's going to be backlash.
Yeah, from the conservative side, critics argued that Roosevelt was overreaching, that he was threatening private enterprise by regulating things too much, that he was concentrating too much power in the executive branch. And business leaders pushed back quite a bit. Some of them wouldn't even say his name. They would just say, like, that man.
Like
man.
Voldemort.
Yeah, and some Americans saw the New Deal as dangerously close to socialism, which historically there's been a lot of backlash to that since the end of World War I. And even though it was really an effort to save capitalism by regulating it and cushioning it, some didn't see it that way.
And so we have a classic battle here between executive power and the Constitution. Did Roosevelt really have the ability to push forward some of these programs? The Supreme Court became the place, as it so often does, where this battle played out. And in the mid-1930s, the court struck down many important New Deal measures, including programs that were really central to Roosevelt's early efforts. And that fed the sense that the country was in a constitutional, and not just economic struggle, but a constitutional struggle about how far could federal power really go in actually managing this national crisis.
Right. So you had it coming at you from the right, and you also have it coming at you from the left. If you know you're doing something right
Yeah, both
when
sides.
when you're getting it from both sides.
Yeah.
Am I right about that?
I think you're right.
Huh?
Yeah.
Getting it from both sides?
Assume the boom.
Assume the boom.
So, yes, because many Americans looked at the New Deal and said, this still does not go far enough. And so critics on the left were like a man named Francis Townsend, who proposed generous old age pensions. Many elderly people were living in poverty. There was no such thing as a welfare state or anything like that. Another critic, Father Charles Coughlin, was...
Coughlin, right?
Coughlin.
Because I have a student, I hope she's listening. Same last name, but she says Coughlin. And I say, no, it's Coughlin.
He was Coughlin. And
Yeah.
he was actually a priest, hence the father, who would go on the radio and he blasted elites and pushed a much more radical economic critique of what was happening. And then finally, Huey Long,
Kingfish.
he had been the
Huey Long.
governor of Louisiana, right?
Yeah.
He built support with his program called Share Our Wealth, with the line, every man a king, arguing that concentrated wealth had to be broken up much more aggressively and redistributed.
He's a fascinating story.
Yeah, he got assassinated.
Well, spoiler alert. Jeez.
Sorry.
I
Okay,
thought
so
he was
yeah.
still alive.
So all this pressure really matters because Roosevelt is really being squeezed. Either he's doing too much or not enough, and that really puts political pressure on him to do something to really kind of cement his plans for America. He's going to come out with the second New Deal.
And if you thought the first was good, just wait for the sequel.
Bam.
So the second New Deal is where the social democratic edge becomes more obvious. That this is where Roosevelt's administration leans a lot harder into long-term protections and labor rights.
And this is the quintessence of the New Deal overall, but certainly the second New Deal is Social Security. This is
Here comes the boom.
Here comes.
Assume the boom.
Don't ever assume it, or maybe you should assume it. Here it comes, the boom. Don't leave the room because it's the boom.
What has happened to
I
us?
don't know what just happened to me. So this is instituted in 1935. It creates a federal old age insurance system. So he's kind of borrowing from some of his left critics here, and helps establish the idea that the national government has an ongoing responsibility for economic security in old age and unemployment.
We should note that it was seen as incredibly radical at the time. It's just straight up called a form of communism, and yet today is widely considered to be one of the more useful components of the federal government.
Untouchable.
Yeah.
I would
Old
almost
people
call
don't
it.
have to die in poverty anymore.
Speaking of another really powerful transformative act is the Wagner Act, or the National Labor Relations Act, which is going to protect workers' rights to organize and to form unions. And most importantly, they have the federal government support to collectively bargain. It shifts the power to labor, and it helps organize industrial workers on a national scale.
And then another part of the second New Deal, I mentioned this earlier, the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, which becomes one of the best known work relief programs of the era. They built roads, bridges, schools, public buildings, murals, plays. They did oral history projects. The WPA is part survival, but part infrastructure, but also part cultural project. If you're going to try to get people back to work, you might as well improve the country while you're at it. And it put people back to work, and it also left behind this visual and civic footprint all over the country.
You're darn right it did, because if you ever go down to a little
Darn right.
town called Jackson,
Oh boy.
you head uptown, and when you see the courthouse, you take a left, and then you head up to the high school. You're going to see the number one high school football stadium in the state of Missouri. It's called the Pit. It's one of the hardest places to play. And you're going to notice that the stadium looks pretty old. And in fact, it was built by the WPA.
Cool.
No kidding.
So awesome.
That is kind of cool.
It is
Wasn't the Jewel Box in Forest Park the WPA? Just for our St. Louis listeners?
Not sure.
I'm almost positive
maybe,
it was.
yeah.
Okay.
The Pit
We're gonna go
definitely
with that.
was.
What percentage of your positivity are you?
99.
Dang, that's we're going to go with that then.
Yeah.
So this is the moment where you can really say the New Deal changes the grammar of American politics. After this, arguments are no longer just about whether the federal government should act in economic life. The argument increasingly becomes how it should act, for whom, and how far it should go.
And then Roosevelt kind of, he's feeling himself here. He says, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to overreach. I'm going to fight back against some of my biggest detractors. And in 1937, just continued to be frustrated by these Supreme Court decisions. He proposes that, hey, let's reorganize the Supreme Court. And maybe I'll nominate a few of my own justices and sort of even things up here. It gets known as court packing, and it's a pretty controversial moment.
Yeah, and he's also not the first one to suggest something like this. The basic idea was to add additional justices for older sitting Supreme Court justices who did not retire. And Roosevelt defended it as an administrative reform, but many Americans saw it as a very naked attempt to reshape the court after it had blocked his agenda.
Yeah, they were naked under their robes.
I don't think
the
so.
Supreme Court.
Really?
No, okay, here's the thing, Dr. Garrison. Everybody's naked under your clothes anyway.
Oh, that's true.
And then there was a awkward
Let's
pause.
keep going.
And politically, it backfired, as we've just kind of been talking about. Even people who liked the New Deal could really dislike that particular move. It damaged Roosevelt's image, cost him political capital, and made it easier for critics to say, see, this is what too much executive power looks like.
Yeah, but at the same time, the court sort of backed off. They kind of didn't want to go to the mattresses for this. So it did allow him to push through some of his new ideas. But really, what really distracts from all of this is we have another mini recession on top of the Great Depression in 1937 and 1938. So even after all this New Deal activity, Americans cannot seem to escape this fragile economy.
And the Dust Bowl, it's still haunting the country too. For many farm families, especially on the plains, disaster is not just one event. It's years and years of drought and debt and dust, migration, instability. And so by the late 30s, there's this feeling of suspension, that things are different, the government is bigger, Some people are safer, but this crisis is just not fully over.
Right. That's the limbo. Americans have not gone back to the 20s. They're not fully secure in the present, and they do not yet know that global war is about to transform the economy in ways the New Deal reforms alone could never do.
All right, so let's reach a stopping point here. It's 1938, 1939. Country is still hurting. There's been some improvement, but unemployment is still relatively high. It's not as high as its worst point, but the pain is still there. Full recovery, as was hoped, has not shown its face.
But the nation is not the same nation that it was in 1929, just like Dr. Garrison is not the same Dr. Garrison he was before he got absolutely destroyed in the 3v3 basketball game yesterday by a student.
I'll never be the same.
So the federal government is larger now. It's much more interventionist, more responsible for economic welfare than ever before. Labor has many more legal protections. The elderly have the beginnings of a national safety net through Social Security. Banking and securities are more regulated. The presidency itself feels more intimate and more activist.
And maybe most importantly, American democracy has not collapsed into dictatorship during this catastrophe. That's not a small thing in the 1930s. A lot of countries responded to crisis with authoritarianism. The United States responded with argument, experimentation, expansion of federal power, and plenty of conflict, but still within democratic politics.
What a great place to stop, because we've got a major event upon the horizon that we will tackle
event
next episode. But thank you.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Wow.
Dang, you nailed
I'm really
that.
good at FDR.
You were so rolling on that.
Really good. But all right, so thanks for tuning in to APUSH for All. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, or YouTube, and leave us a review. If you got a topic you want us to cover, send us a message on Instagram at APUSH for All. And if you want to, send me a message of support in this time of crisis, I'd welcome it.
Please do. I'll delete them all. Until next time, keep learning from yesterday to make sense of today.